Hey there. Tonight, we're not walking in the footsteps of lords or knights. We're moving quietly through the shadows with the servants who made the castle run while rarely being seen. The scullery maid scrubbing before dawn. The spit boy turning meat until his arms go numb. The laundress with frozen hands. The guard pacing in silence while everyone else sleeps. This is their story, not one of glory or grandeur, but of relentless work, aching limbs, and quiet strength. 10 lives, 10 days, all under one roof, but in entirely different worlds. Good morning. You're awake, not because you've had enough sleep, don't be ridiculous, but because the stone floor you were using as a mattress has successfully leached the last bit of warmth from your body. Also, the cook stepped on you twice. That's just how your day begins when you're the lowest ranking life form in a medieval castle. Welcome to the thrilling career of a scullery maid. You are unpaid, unwashed, and largely unnoticed unless someone needs something cleaned or someone else to blame. You sleep beside the hearth because it's the only warm place in the kitchen. And by warm, we mean marginally less cold than outside. Your bedding is a burlap sack filled with straw that has seen better decades. It smells like burnt fat, wet wood, and crushed ambition. Your shift, that's your one piece of clothing, is made of coarse, undyed wool that doubles as both pajamas and uniform. It's been boiled maybe twice this year, probably once, possibly never. You rise before the sun, before the roosters, before God, it seems. Why? Because everything that needs to happen before the nobles wake, fire, water, bread, cleaning, is your responsibility. Technically not yours alone, but let's be honest, the other girls know how to hide when work is handed out. You haven't learned that trick yet, or maybe you just weren't born slippery enough. The hearth is dead. The embers have gone cold overnight. That's bad. A scullery without fire is like a knight without armor. Still dangerous, but mostly just pathetic. You shuffle outside into the pitch-black courtyard, barefoot, because your shoes disintegrated last spring and were repurposed as door insulation. The flagstones are wet and jagged. You gather kindling with hands too numb to feel splinters. Back inside, you crouch by the hearth and begin coaxing flame from damp wood and angry thoughts. Eventually, the fire crackles to life and you hold your fingers above it until they stop resembling corpse fingers. You're now ready for your next task. Water. The castle does not have plumbing. It has you. You haul wooden buckets from the well, gallons and gallons of water, heavy and sloshing, balanced on a yoke across your narrow shoulders. It takes multiple trips. Your arms burn, your back screams, your knees wobble like boiled barley, and you haven't even reached breakfast yet. By the time the kitchen staff starts filtering in, yawning, stretching, scratching, you're on your 4th trip to the well. No one thanks you. No one even makes eye contact. You are furniture with legs. That's all. The cook bursts in like a thunderclap, in a bad mood. She's sweating already, barking orders, and armed with a wooden spoon that's been repurposed as a disciplinary device. She shouts something about the stew pot still being crusty. That's your cue to start scrubbing again. You scrub pots until your knuckles bleed. No soap, of course. That's for rich people and sinners. You use ashes, sand, and lye. If someone remembers to make it, the lye burns. So does the ash, in its own gritty way. You've developed something between a callus and a chemical burn on your right hand. The left one's worse. The scullery is a room of punishment disguised as a workspace. There's no ventilation. The one window is permanently clogged with soot. Everything smells like meat that's been boiled too long and something else you don't want to identify. You spend most of your day hunched over basins, scraping grease from pewter trenchers, and slapping rats off the table with a ladle. Let's talk about rats. They run this place. You just work here. Mid-morning arrives. You haven't eaten. There's a heel of bread in your apron, hidden and dry as chalk. You gnaw on it behind the doorway, trying not to look guilty. You fail. A kitchen maid spots you, reports you, and now you're assigned to latrine pot duty for the rest of the week. Congratulations. Later, you get promoted to onion duty, which is just a fancy way of saying cry professionally for 2 hours. You chop onions until your face is a waterfall. No one asks if you're okay. Everyone assumes you're just weeping from your station in life. Around noon, the nobles take their first meal of the day. You carry in dishes, step precisely where you've been told, and do not make eye contact under any circumstances. Nobles don't like to be reminded that servants have eyes, faces, or thoughts. You hold a picture for a full hour and are never asked to pour. Your arms go numb. That's normal. After the meal, you clean again. The same trenchers, now slicked with gravy, bones tossed carelessly under the table, half-eaten pies, chewed grapes, and something that might have once been a fish. You scrape it all into the slot bucket. You're not allowed to keep scraps, but you might sneak one. Just once, just the crust, just the edge, just enough to keep standing. Afternoon blurs into evening. You haul more water, peel more roots, mop the floor, sweep the hall. You get blamed for the dog vomiting in the solar, even though you've never even seen the solar. Doesn't matter. You were there spiritually. As the sun sets, dinner prep begins. It's louder now, hotter. The hearth is blazing, smoke filling the rafters. Someone drops a pot. The cook screams. A fire nearly starts. You slap it out with your apron and keep moving. You're allowed to eat again, this time from a shared bowl passed between 5 girls. The stew is mostly liquid, a floating root, a grain of barley, and a suspicious chunk that might be squirrel. Doesn't matter. You eat it. It's food. Finally, dinner is served to the nobles. You stand nearby again, a background character in someone else's pageant. Your feet are soaked. Your back is locked. You haven't spoken in hours, except to say, yes, cook, sorry, cook, or it won't happen again, cook, whether or not you know what happened. Night falls. Dishes again. More scrubbing. Bones stuck to the pan like medieval cement. Your hands are shaking now, not from cold, but from exhaustion. You're dismissed with a grunt. You crawl back to your sack near the hearth. The fire has dimmed to glowing embers. You press close to the stone for warmth. Your tunic is still damp. You smell like smoke, onions, and fatigue. Someone's already asleep beside you. Someone else is crying quietly. You don't ask who. You don't want to know.
You lie there for a moment, not asleep, not quite awake, thinking about what came before this. You didn't choose this life. No one chooses to be a scullery maid. You were born into it. Your mother worked in the dairy until her back gave out. Your aunt did laundry until she caught fever from the river. Now it's your turn. You're part of the great medieval inheritance, suffering passed down like a ladle. There's no path up. You don't become a cook. You don't marry the steward. You don't get promoted to lady's maid and learn embroidery under soft candlelight. That's fiction. You grow older, your hands get worse, and eventually you're too slow to scrub the pots, and they replace you with someone younger, cheaper, and less likely to fall asleep standing up. So you pay attention to the little things, the rhythm of the kitchen, the shifting alliances between servants, the unspoken rules of survival. Never correct the cook. Always share the driest part of the bread with the girl who's bleeding. Stay out of the steward's way. If you hear a noble's footsteps behind you, move immediately or risk being trampled, physically or socially. There's gossip, of course, the only currency the servants have. Someone swears the chamberlain is sleeping with the lady-in-waiting. Someone else says he's in love with the choir boy. Someone saw the knight with the red beard eat 5 figs and throw up into his own helmet. That one is probably true. When there's a wedding or a feast, it's chaos. 3 times the guests, 10 times the work, and no time for anything but frantic scrubbing and silent praying. The nobles celebrate, you blister. By the end of those nights, you're not even tired, you're hollow. And then there's winter, the worst of it. You work through your own cough, your own fever. You wear the same shift for weeks, layered with scraps. There are days when the water in your bucket freezes before you can get back to the kitchen. You keep going anyway, because if you stop, someone else takes your spot. And because you've been told that suffering without complaint is a virtue, especially for girls like you. You used to have a name. People used to say it. Now you're just girl, or maybe you there. You're not special. You're not a hero. You're just another invisible cog in the castle machine. And yet, the castle runs because of you. Because you get up before the sun. Because you know how to quiet a squeaky hinge with goose grease. Because you remember which bucket is clean and which one holds the mop water. Because you scrub the pans until they shine like coins you'll never hold. No statue will ever be carved for you, no songs sung. But if you disappeared tomorrow, the kitchen would fall apart in a week. You don't sleep well, you twitch, you ache. Your dreams are strange and half-formed, sometimes of green fields, sometimes of boats sailing away, sometimes of nothing at all. You wake with your mouth dry and your arms heavy. Another day begins, another day exactly like the last, and no one notices, except maybe Lord Crumbs.
The Spit Boy. You are the Spit Boy. Congratulations. Or condolences. It really depends on how much you enjoy rotating slowly in front of an open flame while contemplating your life choices. You're somewhere between 8 and 12 years old, small enough to crouch under the hearth, old enough to not cry every time you burn yourself. You are either orphaned, sold, or your parents were very persuasive when it came to convincing you this was an opportunity. Your job is to sit on a stool, if you're lucky enough to have one, beside the great kitchen hearth and turn the spit all day, slowly, clockwise mostly, until someone tells you otherwise. Sometimes you're told to stop. Sometimes you're told you're turning too fast or too slow, or that you weren't turning it with enough noble dignity. Once someone accused you of cheekiness because you blinked too often. It's hot. Hot in a way that feels unnatural, like living inside a loaf of bread that's halfway through baking. Your cheeks are constantly flushed, your hair is always damp, your tunic, singed at the hem, smells like every type of meat that's ever passed through this kitchen. You used to like the smell of roasting duck. Now it gives you migraines. Burns are constant, blisters everywhere. The kitchen has no sympathy. You're just expected to get better at dodging. If you blister your palm, wrap it in a rag. If your eyebrows singe off, grow new ones. If you faint, try to land somewhere that won't spill anything. You don't get breaks. The meat doesn't care if your arms are tired. The fire doesn't care if you're sweating so hard it's dripping into your eyes. The nobles expect their roast goose to spin at the correct angle and pace, or heads will metaphorically roll, sometimes literally, depending on how drunk the steward is. On special feast days, the spit gets longer. Bigger birds, whole pigs, once an entire deer. It took 2 of you to turn it. Your partner had a lazy eye and a mean streak. He let go of the crank at random intervals just to watch you panic. You haven't seen him in a while. Rumor has it he's been reassigned to the kennels. You hope the dogs are treating him fairly. You sit for hours in the same position. Your knees go numb, your back knots up. One time your foot fell asleep so hard you thought you'd gone lame. The steward called you dramatic and threw a turnip at your head. The kitchen is chaos, shouting, boiling, clanging, people running into each other with trays of oysters and jugs of wine. You are the eye of the storm. Nobody thanks you, nobody remembers you, but if that roast comes out uneven, someone will blame the boy who turned it. When the meat is finally declared done, you help pull it off the spit. Carefully, the fat sizzles, the grease drips. If you flinch, you get scolded. If you hesitate, you get slapped. Then it's on to the next roast, or the stew, or the pies, or the boiling cauldron that smells like fermented onions and despair. You don't really know what time it is, ever. Your entire life is firelight and hunger. Sometimes, if you're lucky, someone throws you a bone. Literally, not a metaphor. A half-gnawed bone with just enough meat on it to pretend you had lunch. You eat it in the corner with your hands, hunched like a little animal, and then go back to turning. By late afternoon, the fire has turned your cheeks red and your lips dry and cracked. Your hands are black with soot. You've inhaled so much smoke that you cough like someone 4 times your age. You're still rotating. You hear the sound of plates clattering and nobles laughing in the hall above. You'll never go there. You're not allowed. That room is clean and bright and full of soft chairs and white bread. You exist so they don't have to. Eventually, the feasting ends. That doesn't mean you're done. It means you now get to help carry trays of half-eaten meat back down to the kitchen. You don't get to eat it. You carry it. You scrape bones into a slop bucket, rinse goblets, and drag the roasting spit into the scullery for cleaning. It's heavy. Your shoulder aches. You pretend you don't feel the blister bursting under your palm. Someone shouts that the Lord wants a roast prepared for his hounds. You start the process all over again. The dogs will eat better than you tonight. Again. It's late now. Your tunic is stuck to your skin, your hair stiff with grease, your hands shaking, not just from fatigue, but from hunger too. You finally get a bowl of pottage. It's thin, just boiled grain and a few soft turnips. You slurp it down in the corner. You don't talk to anyone. There's nothing to say. Everyone's too tired to pretend they're people. You clean the tools, dull knives, the spit, the hooks. Everything must be spotless before the steward's rounds. If he finds a smear of fat, you're scrubbing it with your own spit, if you're lucky. If not, you're on floor duty in the Lord's privy the next day. Night settles like smoke. The kitchen quiets. The last pots clatter into place. The cook finally stops yelling. You sit near the dying fire, too sore to lie down, too wired to sleep. A rat crawls past. You don't flinch. You're too tired to care. You think about your old life before the castle. You were a shepherd's son, maybe, or your parents ran a mill. Maybe they still do. Maybe they forgot you. Or maybe they were just desperate. One less mouth to feed. There's no path out of this. The best you can hope for is that your burns heal properly and that your back doesn't twist too early. If you're lucky, maybe you'll graduate to assistant cook by age 20, if you survive that long. Winter is especially cruel. The castle walls are thick, but the draft still cuts through like a blade. Your station by the hearth should be a blessing. Warmth, light, fire. But it's not warmth. It's exposure. One side of your body roasts while the other side freezes. You rotate like the meat, a human kebab of fatigue and frostbite. You don't have proper shoes. You wrap your feet in scraps and try not to stand in puddles. When you walk, your knees pop like old door hinges. When you crouch, you wonder if you'll ever uncrouch. There are days your fingers are so stiff from cold and burns, you can't tell if you're holding the spit or it's holding you. And your health? You don't have that. Your cough has become part of your personality. Your skin peels from heat rash, then cracks from cold air. You smell constantly of scorched fat, which sounds delicious, but makes people avoid you. You've burned the same forearm so many times, it looks like overcooked pork. No one offers a remedy. The apothecary is for nobles. You're told to rub it with pig lard and keep turning.
The hierarchy in the kitchen is strict. You are beneath the kitchen maids, beneath the butcher's assistant, beneath the boy who fetches eggs. You are the lowest. Even the dog that begs for bones is higher than you. At least it gets scraps. Sometimes the steward nods at you. That's the highlight of your week. You wonder, not often, but sometimes, what your life might look like if you ever left. Then you remember, spit boys don't leave. They either grow up to be other kinds of servants, or they don't grow up at all. You settle into your spot by the hearth again, legs folded, arms hugging your knees. The flames are lower now, but your skin still burns where yesterday's blisters cracked open. You stare into the coals and imagine what it might feel like to be warm without hurting. You don't know. You've never felt that. Outside, snow is falling. Inside, meat is sizzling. And in between them, forgotten and ignored, you keep turning, like you always do. The gong farmer. You know how every castle or town needs someone to deal with the human waste? That's you. You're a gong farmer, which is a polite medieval way of saying professional human filth remover. If it goes in the chamber pot, you take it out. If it ends up in the latrine, you get it back out again. You are the bottom of the bottom, scraping the literal cesspit of society. And somehow it's a real job, one that paid better than some others. But before you get excited, remember it paid better because no one else wanted to do it. Your shift starts at night, not because you're nocturnal, but because no one wants to smell or see you during the day. You're banned from public markets until you've bathed. Not that bathing helps. The stink doesn't wash off. It lives in your pores now. You're the reason people cross the street and pretend they didn't see you. Your tools? A rake, a bucket, and a shovel. Your uniform? Layers of thick wool stuffed with moss and whatever you can find to try and block the smell. It doesn't work. The smell finds a way. It always does. Your job is simple. Go to the cesspits, dig out the compacted, fermented, semi-liquid remains of everything the castle or town has flushed into the earth for the last 6 months, and get it out before it overflows into the streets. You climb down into the pit. Yes, down. Ladder optional, rope if you're lucky. The smell hits you like a brick wall dipped in sewage and fermented despair. It burns your eyes, coats your tongue, and makes you wonder what choices in life led you here. You breathe through your mouth, but it doesn't help. Now you can taste it. You descend slowly, boots squelching on the moist slope of decomposing waste. The pit is ankle-deep in places, knee-deep in others, and bottomless in imagination. You rake through it all. The recent stuff is bad, but the older layers, that's where the nightmares live. Gray sludge, black crusts, slick masses that burble and shift as if they're thinking about becoming sentient. You don't ask questions, you dig. And what are you digging through?
Human waste, of course, animal waste, broken chamber pots, straw soaked with fluids you'll never identify, bits of food, bits of cloth, the occasional dead rat, the occasional other thing. Once you found a chicken, you still don't know how it got down there. You buried it with some dignity. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you find coins dropped by nobles who used the latrine in a hurry. You pocket them. You've earned it. Once your bucket is full, you haul it out. You dump it into your cart, an open wooden box on wheels that creaks like it resents you. You repeat this process a dozen times, more if the castle's had a feast recently. And you always do it at night, under torchlight, because the people above don't want to see the cost of their comfort. You work in silence. No one talks in a cesspit. Once your cart is full of what medieval records gently call night soil, you roll it through the quiet streets. The wheels leave tracks. The air behind you wilts. If anyone sees you, they gag or mutter a prayer. One kid once threw a cabbage at you. You threw something back. You're not proud of it. You head outside the town walls to the dumping grounds, usually near the fields, because guess what? Waste gets reused. All that filth you collect becomes fertilizer. The very same nobles who won't look you in the eye are unknowingly eating vegetables grown in their own refuse. That's what you call medieval recycling. By early morning, you're done dumping, but not done working. You return to clean your tools, which means rinsing them in a pond that's already halfway ruined. You wash your boots, your clothes, your hands. It doesn't help. The stink clings. Your neighbors can always tell what shift you've worked. Some won't sit near you at meals. Some won't even share a table. You try not to let it get to you. You tell yourself it's honest work, important work. If you stopped showing up, the entire castle would flood in filth within the week. You're not a hero, but you're what stands between society and ankle-deep disaster. You eat alone most days. Your bread tastes like ash, not because it's burned, just because everything smells like ash, and worse now. You drink ale because the water's not safe, and because, frankly, being sober around your own job is a kind of masochism. Winter is the worst, not because it's cold, though it is, but because everything freezes. The waste freezes, your hands freeze, your breath turns to steam and then to regret. You've got to hack through icy crusts with a shovel just to reach the warm, steaming horror beneath. It's the only time you'll ever see something warm and be upset about it. Summer isn't better. Summer bakes everything. The stench gets airborne. Flies swarm, wasps show up for reasons you don't understand. You sweat so much it soaks through your shoes. You've tried everything to mask the smell. Vinegar, crushed herbs, even rubbing yourself with mint leaves. All it does is make the stench floral. People joke about you behind your back. Smells like a gong farmer is an insult. Some people assume you're stupid. You're not. You know how to brace a ladder with one leg while hauling 40 pounds of waste up a rope with the other. You know which side of the pit is safer to stand on after rain. You know which torch oils don't explode when dropped into methane pockets. That's science, or something like it. And here's the kicker. You make more money than most servants. Yep, this is one of the few medieval jobs that actually paid well. Not luxuriously. You still live in a one-room hut on the edge of town, but better than a cook's help or a baker's boy, because no one else wants to do what you do ever. They'd rather starve than crawl through what you crawl through. That's your leverage, your curse, your wage. By night's end, you're done. You drag your empty cart back to the yard, lean your shovel against the wall, and sit down on a log, not because it's clean, but because it's there. You sleep outside when the smell gets too bad. Your wife, if you have one, insists. Your kids say you smell like boiled cabbage and sin. You can't argue. They're right. You close your eyes, but the scent stays. It always stays. You smell it even in your dreams. Your hands don't look like hands anymore. The skin is always cracked, the nails black from grime. No matter how long you soak them, the calluses stay. You've stopped trying to scrub them clean. The soap costs more than your dignity. You used to be able to smell flowers, grass, firewood. Not anymore. Your nose is broken, not physically, but spiritually. All you can ever smell now is rot. If a cart of apples rolled past you, you'd think they'd gone off. You've been rewired. Sometimes the castle guards joke with you. They say things like, "Don't fall in," and laugh like that's the first time you've heard it. You smile politely and pretend it's funny. Once, one of them shoved you near the edge of the pit for a laugh. You didn't smile that time. You have dreams, rarely, about becoming something else. A baker, maybe. A scribe. But when you wake up, your hands still smell like last night. And so, you rinse your face, adjust your sackcloth tunic, and walk back to the pit. Because even in dreams, someone has to carry the bucket. As the sky turns gray and the roosters begin their song, you haul your last bucket, scrape your last shoe, and exhale into the morning. The castle will wake soon, oblivious. The nobles will relieve themselves into gilded bowls, unaware of what happens after. And you'll vanish into shadow again, like the stink you carry. That's your job. That's your role.
And you'll vanish into shadow again, like the stink you carry. That's your job. That's your role. That's your day. The Chamberlain's apprentice. You wear shoes. That alone makes you higher in rank than 3/4 of the castle staff. They're stiff leather, curled at the toe, and they squeak when you walk, which is unfortunate because silence is part of your job. You're the apprentice to the Chamberlain, which means you carry ledgers, memorize inventories, and pretend to understand what the words protocol and accountability really mean. You're not noble, of course. Don't get any ideas. You're a servant, but you're a servant with access. You enter rooms others only clean. You witness things most peasants couldn't spell. You fetch parchment, write numbers, and maintain calm when the countess is screaming that her linens smell like goat. Your day begins before the lords rise. You wake in the servants' hall near the good fire, the one not used for cooking rats or heating piss buckets. You splash water on your face, comb your hair with your fingers, and brush your tunic clean with your own sleeve. Presentation matters. First task, candles. You walk along hallways, replacing stubs with fresh tallow tapers. Beeswax is for the chapel and the great hall only. Everyone else gets the cheap stuff that smells faintly of sheep. As you move from room to room, you note anything out of place. That's your second job, to notice. If the salt cellar is low, you write it down. If the wine stock is 2 casks short, you investigate. If the chamber pot in the guest room is full, you find someone else to deal with it. You delegate downwards. It's tradition. The Chamberlain is already awake, of course. He never sleeps, it seems. He's a narrow man with a sharp nose and sharper expectations. He smells faintly of ink and dried lavender. His robes are always spotless, and he always knows when you've made a mistake, sometimes before you make it. He speaks in lists: 2 bolts of woolen broadcloth, 4 barrels of lamp oil, 1 visiting friar with dietary demands bordering on heresy. You nod, write it all down, and pray you don't spill ink again. Last time you did, he made you recopy an entire month's ledger by candlelight, while the steward watched and chewed pickled herring directly into your ear. Your job is part clerk, part courier, part scapegoat. When the linens go missing, it's your fault.
When the firewood is damp, it's your fault. When the Lord's hunting dog defecates in the guest stairwell, somehow it's still your fault. Mid-morning is for inspections. You follow the chamberlain through holes and chambers like a silent, scribbling ghost. He taps walls, lifts bed covers, tastes wine, sniffs rushes. You nod and record. You try not to sigh. Once you caught yourself yawning and spent the rest of the day organizing dry peas by size and color. You envy no one in this castle except maybe the cook's dog, who at least gets to bark without consequence. Lunch is not a break, it's a logistical nightmare. Who eats what, when and where, and who is seated 2 spots away from whom, so no one accidentally reignites a blood feud over pigeon pie. You carry seating charts, correct titles, and gentle reminders that Lady Crusader is no longer speaking to Lord Aldrich since the Lent wine incident. After the meal, the Chamberlain reviews counts. You sit across from him in the solar, reading aloud each line item: wax, fish, salt, horseshoes, ink, wool, barley, mead, soap, barley again. The list never ends. Occasionally, he asks you for the weight of a cask or how many loaves can be cut from a stone of flour. If you hesitate, he raises one eyebrow. You'd rather be slapped. Then come the visitors, nobles from another estate, a wandering knight, some distant cousin who somehow is always between holdings. They arrive with trunks and egos and dietary needs. You show them to their chambers and take careful notes on what linens they receive, not because anyone will thank you, but because someone will absolutely blame you when they vanish. You're also responsible for the castle's keys, or more accurately, for fetching them. The armory key, the wine cellar key, the upstairs wardrobe key that fits nowhere but is still important. You carry them in a pouch tied tightly to your belt, and you touch them reflexively like prayer beads. Losing them would be a career-ending scandal, possibly a beating, possibly exile, possibly worse, permanent latrine duty. By late afternoon, the lists have turned to logistics. A shipment of salted herring is late. A bolt of velvet has gone missing. A priest drank too much and is asleep on the chapel floor. The kitchen is out of vinegar. The stables need more hay. The steward has opinions. You listen, you nod, and draft a polite response in the chamberlain's hand. Sometimes you draft love notes. Yes, really. There's a noble lady who insists on communicating only via letters. She dictates them to you behind a curtain while feeding her lapdog strawberries soaked in cream. You write what she says, edit out the madness, and deliver the wax-sealed nonsense to a knight who blushes like a baker's oven every time he opens one. Evening approaches. Candles again. You pass through the halls with a taper and a snuffer, relighting what's gone out, trimming what's burned too low. The halls are quieter now. The nobles drink, the servants breathe, and you are somewhere in between. Not invited to either world, but required in both. You check on the guest rooms again, fluff the rushes, straighten the curtains, ensure that no one has died, spilled wine, or eloped without proper documentation. By now your feet hurt, your head pounds, and your fingers are stained with wax and ink. You haven't eaten since morning, but you won't eat until the chamberlain finishes his supper and dismisses you. Sometimes he forgets. You sit outside his chamber for an hour while he recounts stories from his youth to a bored page boy who probably dreams of becoming a knight. You doze with your chin in your palm and your stomach caving in. Eventually, the door opens. You're dismissed with a flick of 2 fingers. You bow, murmur thanks, and retreat to the servants' quarters. Your bunk is narrow. The fire's out. Someone else has stolen your blanket again. You lie down, still half-dressed, and stare at the ceiling. You wonder if this is what power smells like. Tallow, ink, sweat, and lavender. You used to think working near the nobles would be exciting. that you'd hear secrets, learn how power works. You've heard the secrets, all right, mostly about hemorrhoids, stolen pastries, and who thinks whom is insufferable. As for power, it's just more rules, more ways to fail. The Chamberlain says you're learning discipline. What you're learning is exhaustion. What you're learning is how to be invisible, indispensable, and ignored at the same time. You've become fluent in silence, skilled in being present but forgettable. There's talk of promotion. Maybe one day you'll be assistant to the steward or manage to sell her books. More likely, you'll keep doing this until your back gives out or your eyes go bad from reading numbers by candlelight. There's no pension, just a slower decline. And still, you show up because your work keeps the chaos stitched together, because the castle doesn't run without you, because someone needs to make sure the salt stock matches the winter ration plans, and because if you don't, someone will notice. You drift off to sleep counting barrels in your head. You dream in inventory. You wake when the first bell rings. It's still dark. You stand up, stretch your aching legs, and adjust your squeaky shoes. It's time to relight the candles and begin again. The other servants tolerate you, barely. You're not one of them, not anymore. You wear cleaner clothes, you use words like allocation and inventory. But you're not one of the nobles either. They forget your name even as you light their hearths and refill their inkwells. You exist in the gap, a walking reminder that power trickles down slowly and responsibility floods upward. And still you show up, because showing up is what keeps the castle standing. And tomorrow, like today, you'll carry the lists, count the candles, and be blamed for everything that goes wrong. The stable boy. You start your day in a barn that never quite sleeps. The horses stir before the sun rises, snorting clouds of steam into the frozen air, hooves clattering softly in stalls layered with straw and the occasional rat. You are the stable boy. That means you shovel, you brush, you haul, you get kicked often, but mostly you apologize to creatures that outrank you in both grace and nutrition. You sleep in the loft above the main stable, if you can call it sleep. The floorboards are thin, and the horses below never stop shifting. You hear everything, a tail swishing, a hoof stomping, the unmistakable sound of something large defecating very close to your pillow.
Your hands are already cracked before dawn. You pull on the same stiff boots, the same sour-smelling tunic, and climb down the ladder. The cold hits you like a slap from God. You start mucking out the stalls one by one. Shovel, pitch, shovel again. It's not glamorous. It's not even tolerable. But it has to be done before the master of horse arrives, or else you'll spend the morning with a split lip and a lecture on discipline. You work fast, but not too fast. Moving too quickly spooks the horses, and spooked horses are worse than angry nobles. They bite, rear, and crush. You've already broken 2 fingers and once got a hoof to the ribs that left you coughing blood for a week. Still, you love them, the animals. They don't lie, they don't yell, they don't pretend to be better than you. The stable smells like hay, manure, sweat, and horse, which is somehow worse and better than anything inside the castle. You don't mind it anymore. You've stopped smelling things the way regular people do. You know the scent of a healthy stallion versus one with colic. You can tell when a horse is nervous just by how it breathes. These animals make more sense than most people. After the stalls are cleared, you fetch feed, heavy sacks of oats and hay bales stacked high in the loft. You lower them one by one, careful not to twist your back again like last winter. You nearly passed out, and the master said, "He's faking it," before throwing a bridle at your head. Feeding is a delicate dance. Some horses are greedy, some are shy, some will bite your hand if you reach at the wrong moment.
You've got scars to prove it. You pat their necks, check their hooves, and whisper nonsense to keep them calm. They know your voice. They trust you more than most nobles ever will. Mid-morning means grooming. You brush, curry, clean hooves, and untangle manes. You pluck burrs, wipe noses, and scoop more dung than you care to count. If the Lord is riding, you polish the tack until it gleams, not because he'll notice, but because the master of horse will. And if anything is amiss, it's your hide that gets tanned, not the leather. Sometimes the nobles bring dogs into the stable. Hunting dogs, loud, twitchy things with more pedigree than sense. You clean up after them too. No one ever says thank you. When the Lord decides to ride, and he always decides last minute, everything changes. The stable turns into a whirlwind. You saddle his best gelding, the one that doesn't like to be touched. You check the straps 3 times, wipe the bit with a cloth, make sure the stirrups are exactly how he likes them. Too short, of course, because fashion over function is eternal. Then you stand aside, quiet and invisible, while he mounts. If the horse fidgets, it's your fault. If he slips in the mud, it's your fault. If he falls and breaks a nail, it's probably still your fault. You'll hear about it for weeks. In the meantime, you fetch fresh water, sweep the yard, and stack more hay. The smell of leather and sweat clings to your skin. Your shoulders ache, your arms throb, you've pulled muscles you didn't know existed and bled in places that shouldn't. You get a break sometimes, but it's not restful. You sit on a stool, sip warm ale from a tin cup, and stare at the dust motes drifting through the air like exhausted ghosts. You don't talk, your jaw hurts from clenching it, your body hurts from existing, but the horses still need brushing. In winter, it's worse. Your fingers go numb, even inside gloves. The troughs freeze. The breath from the horses steams in the cold like dragon smoke. You break ice with a hammer just to get them a drink. Sometimes you wonder if anyone inside the castle even knows the stable has no insulation. In summer, you're a walking blister. You sweat through your tunic, your shirt, your soul. Evening arrives with flies, clouds of them. They gather in the corners of the stable, buzzing like tiny curses. You swat them away half-heartedly while cleaning out the last stalls. One of the older mares has soiled her bedding 3 times today. She's nervous. Bad weather is coming. You feel it in your joints, the way the air shifts, before the sky even darkens. You sweep again, rake again, scrub the troughs with a fistful of straw and an old brush that lost its bristles 2 years ago. No one replaces it. No one notices but you. The master of horse checks in one last time. He grunts if he's pleased, yells if he's not. You've learned to measure your day and the distance between his voice and your face. You sneak a few carrots from the feed room. One for the gray mare that doesn't bite, one for the chestnut who only bites strangers. They nuzzle your hand with soft velvet noses. It's the closest thing to affection you get. When the sun goes down, you climb the ladder to the loft again. Your bed is a pile of rags and straw. It smells like mildew and saddle oil. You lie down in your clothes. There's no point undressing. You'll only have to put it all back on in 5 hours. You listen to the horses breathing, the wind pressing against the wooden slats. You count hoofbeats in your dreams. You'll be up before dawn again. No one at court knows your name. They call you boy, even though you're nearly 17 and your back creaks like a drawbridge. When you pass in the halls, they wrinkle their noses, not because you're rude, but because you smell like a life they don't want to imagine. Still, some nod. The kitchen maid leaves you crusts. The blacksmith grunts a greeting. Once, A knight gave you a silver coin because you calmed his stallion before battle. You still have it. You don't plan to spend it. It's proof that you're not invisible. You're not stupid. You know you won't rise high. There's no ladder from stable boy to steward, no horse brush that turns into a sword. You're not going to become a knight, not even a squire. But you know animals, and that's something. You know how to wrap a wound, calm a foal, and spot a lame leg before it gets worse. You matter in a quiet way. You've seen what happens to boys who can't take it. They leave, break, or disappear one night after a whipping. No one asks questions. You do your job and keep your head down. In bad weather, the stables leak. In summer, the hay rots. In winter, your breath ices on the rafters, but the horses are still there, waiting, breathing, trusting. And that's enough. Not always, but most days. So you close your eyes, listening to the weight of hooves in straw, the creak of wood, and the soft breath of creatures that never judged you. Tomorrow it starts again. You are the stable boy, and the horses need you. You don't stay for the praise. There isn't any. You stay because the horses know your voice, because they nicker when they hear your boots, because in a world full of orders, lies, and punishments, this is the one place where you're trusted, not for who you are, but how you move, how you speak, how you listen. And that kind of trust is rare, even in a castle. The Turnspit Dog Keeper. You wake up with a paw in your mouth again. It belongs to a turnspit dog, short-legged, long-bodied, vaguely miserable, like a sausage with trauma. He sprawled across your straw pallet, snoring softly, his fur matted with kitchen grease and what might be duck fat. You don't mind. He's warm, and honestly, he smells better than most of your coworkers. You're the Turnspit Dog Keeper, which means you are the invisible, overworked, underfed bridge between noble cuisine and the medieval animal treadmill. Yes, that's a thing. The dogs run, the spit turns, the meat cooks, and someone has to make sure the dogs don't die, snap, or sit down mid-roast. That someone is you. Your shift begins before the fire's even lit. You get up, stretch your back until it clicks, and immediately step in something wet. Hopefully water, probably not. The dogs are restless, they know what's coming. You haul the first of them from the pallet, a stubborn mutt named Snipe. He bites you lightly. You deserve it. He's been on spit duty 3 days in a row. You rub his ears, mutter an apology, and lead him into the kitchen. The fires are already smoking. The cook is yelling about swan again. You open the turnspit wheel. It looks like a hamster wheel, if hamsters weighed 30 pounds and had job-related trauma. Snipe crawls in. You latch the gate behind him. He starts walking. The spit begins to turn. The roast boar, maybe, begins to spin.
Now you watch, you time, you bribe, you beg. The trick is keeping them moving without pushing them too hard. If the dog slows down, the roast cooks unevenly, and the cook throws things, hot things, sharp things, emotional things. If the dog stops completely, the spit jerks, the meat slips, and you spend the rest of the morning being told that you've ruined Christmas. It's May. There are 4 dogs. You rotate them like wheels on a cart. 2 on duty, 2 resting. But none of them really rest. They just whine, twitch, and gnaw on old bones in the corner while you rub their legs and whisper encouragements like you're raising canine gladiators. You clean the wheels too, not because anyone tells you to, but because they squeak loud enough to make the cook's temples throb. You learned that lesson last month when a squeal mid-banquet earned you a ladle to the forehead. Sometimes the Lord himself walks through. He doesn't speak to you.
just nods vaguely toward the meat and compliments the earthy flavor. That's your sweat, and probably some dog hair. You're welcome. Feeding the dogs is another gamble. They're not supposed to eat scraps from the noble table, but you do it anyway. No one wants to run on an empty stomach, and dried peas aren't exactly performance fuel. So, when no one's looking, you slip them bits of goose fat or crusts soaked in gravy. They love you for it, until one of them bites your thumb off, which almost happened last week. Burns are common. Your forearms look like parchment. The kitchen is a furnace. Even in winter, it's a wall of smoke, heat, and shouting. In summer, it becomes a punishment from God. The fire never goes out. Not really. Even at night, it smolders. And you sleep nearby. Just close enough to be useful, just far enough to be forgotten. You've inhaled so much ash that your snot comes out black. Your cough sounds like a dying bellows. Your eyes are permanently red, which at least hides the tears. You used to think dogs were cheerful, loyal, friendly. Now you know better. These are working dogs, bred not for companionship, but for endless mechanical endurance. They don't want affection, they want your bread. And if you're late feeding them, they organize a rebellion. You once walked into the wheel room to find 3 of them sitting in a circle chewing your shoe. No one taught you how to train them. You just learned by trial, error, and blood loss. You keep a stick nearby. You don't like using it. You really don't. But sometimes they refuse to run. Sometimes they dig in their paws and stare at you with the eyes of an animal who knows it's part of a joke it can't understand. You've named them all. Snipe, Button, Moors. Guts is the mean one. He only likes you when you feed him bacon grease. Otherwise, he growls like a brewing storm and snaps at your ankles when he's off duty. You think he sees the world the same way you do. Tired, greasy, and full of smoke. Once, a noble child wandered into the kitchen. She pointed at the wheel dog and said, "Look, a spinning puppy." You smiled. Then her tutor yanked her away and glared at you like you'd exposed her to something indecent. You didn't say a word. You never do. At some point, you realize your posture has changed. You walk hunched now, from years of ducking under low beams, crouching beside dog pens, and carrying iron spits still hot from the fire. Your hands are covered in calluses and burns. Your knees ache when it rains. You're 17. You used to dream of being a falconer. You thought maybe you'd train birds, walk through forests, wear a leather glove, and squint at the sky like you understood something. Now you can't even hear birds over the constant drumming of paws in a wheel. When you do get a moment alone, you sit by the back door, just out of sight. You let one of the dogs curl up next to you, usually Moors, the quiet one. She's the only creature in the kitchen that doesn't demand anything. She just breathes, warm and real, and you rest your head against her side for a minute, maybe 2. Then the bell rings again. More meat, more spinning. No one thanks the dog. No one thanks you. At night, you scrub the grease from your arms with sand and prayer. You curl up in straw, listening to the slow pant of sleeping dogs and the lingering sizzle of fat in the hearth. You dream of running, not from anything, just running. And the wheel keeps turning. Sometimes you hear the nobles talk about the charm of rustic kitchens. They mean the decor, the roasted swan, the smell of herbs they think came from the garden and not from the sweat of the scullery maid who harvested them barefoot in the dark. They don't know you exist. They don't know the dogs exist. If they do, they think it's quaint. A detail for the minstrels to include in their songs, the turning hounds of House Waxford, or something equally oblivious. You once overheard a bard say that turnspit dogs enjoy the exercise. You nearly choked on your own laugh. You've learned a strange patience working here. You don't argue, you don't complain, you just keep the wheel turning. You feed the dogs, tend their injuries, clean the wheel, and hope the day ends without blood. You've seen worse. One boy got his hand caught in the gearing last year. He doesn't work here anymore. I'm not sure if he died or just became someone else's problem. You have a small cloth pouch hidden behind a beam. Inside is a bit of cheese you've been saving, a button shaped like a flower, And a dog's tooth. Guts lost it during a particularly bad day. You keep it like a relic, a reminder that even the meanest dog can break under pressure. Your ears ring from the shouting, from the heat, from the spin. Your bones hurt, your stomach is never quite full. But every once in a while, one of the dogs nuzzles your arm after a long run. And in that brief, strange moment, you feel seen. Not by the castle, not by the cook, but by something living. And for now, that's enough. Because in this place, even the smallest kindness, a warm side, a steady breath, a dog that doesn't bite, is worth holding on to. Especially when the fire never goes out and the wheel never stops. You fall asleep to the sound of paws on wood and wake to the same, as if the night itself is on a spit, slowly turning.
The laundress. You wake well before dawn, in darkness and cold. The castle walls don't hold warmth, not for the likes of you. The embers in the hearth are long dead, and your breath fogs in the air above your rough blanket. You sit up, every joint stiff from yesterday's labor. Your hands are already sore, though you haven't touched water yet. You are the laundress, and that means water, soap, fire, and pain. You dress quietly, pulling on a damp wool kirtle that smells faintly of smoke, tallow, and lye. The apron goes over it, stained and stiff with salt from old sweat and splashes of boiled linen water. You wrap a scarf around your hair, shove your feet into cracked leather shoes, and move like you're already late, because you are. The castle is mostly asleep as you pass through the cold stone halls, carrying a basket filled with the previous day's laundry. Shirts yellowed with sweat, underthings damp with fear, linen napkins stained with wine or worse. Some of these pieces belong to nobility, and any error, any shrinking, tearing, staining, will be treated as a personal offense. You've seen girls dismissed over a scorched tablecloth. You've nearly been whipped over a missing chemise. In the courtyard, you fill 2 wooden buckets at the well. The pump groans, the water splashes cold and loud in the morning silence. You carry the buckets, balanced on a yoke over your shoulders. It digs into your skin with every step. Past the smokehouse, past the scullery, to the yard where the great copper boiling pot waits, blackened over yesterday's ashes. You light the fire underneath with trembling hands and flint. By the time the water starts to steam, the air is sharp with smoke and your fingers are red with cold. You mix in a scoop of lye made from hardwood ash you soaked and filtered last week. The liquid goes cloudy. You stir it with a long wooden paddle, careful not to let it splash. The burns on your arms are still healing from the last time you slipped. With the lye water heating, you sort the laundry. Coarse linens in one pile, fine ones in another. The lord's shirts and the ladies' undergarments are treated with reverence, not for what they are, but for what happens to you if they're returned imperfect. Woolens stay separate. You don't boil wool. You've seen a full cloak reduced to the size of a doll's coat in one careless afternoon. You begin with the soak. Linens go into the hot, lye-laced water and are stirred gently to loosen the stench and stains. Then comes the scrubbing. At a flat stone slab near the well, you kneel and press a servant's tunic down hard against the rock. You rub soap into the fabric, black soap, made of tallow and lye, harsh on the cloth and worse on your hands. You scrub in strokes, knuckles whitening. The stone is rough, the cloth is heavy, waterlogged and stubborn. When you dunk it into a barrel to rinse, the water clouds instantly. You smile faintly. Progress. The rinse water is cold, so cold your fingers go numb within minutes. You work anyway, switching hands, clenching them to keep the blood moving. Every now and then, you blow on your fingers and flex your wrists, but it barely helps.
You think of other women, the scullery maids, the wood carrier, and know they're cold too. It doesn't make you feel better, it just reminds you you're not alone. Once the worst of the dirt is out, you haul the linens to the stream that runs behind the outer wall. There, in the shallows, you beat the larger items, sheets, tablecloths, with a wooden paddle. You swing and smack and swing again, the water splashing up your sleeves. Every blow knocks out dirt. Every splash soaks your skin. You can barely feel your knees in the mud. And around you, a few washerwomen from the village do the same. No one speaks. No one needs to. The only sound is water, wood, and the occasional sigh. When the linens are beaten, rinsed, and twisted dry by hand, a process that leaves your shoulders screaming, you drape them over bushes or on long ropes strung between trees. In summer, they dry in the sun. In winter, you hang them near the hearth, praying they don't catch fire. Damp fabric and open flames make uneasy neighbors. You tend the fire again, check the boil, stir the next batch, fetch more water. You lose track of time in the repetition. Haul, soak, scrub, rinse, hang. By midday, you can't feel your forearms. By afternoon, your lower back is a knotted rope. There's a moment, though, when the lady's veil comes clean, a stubborn wine stain finally gone. You hold it up, steaming white against the smoke-dark sky, and feel a flicker of pride. Brief. Then you spot a fray at the hem and mutter a curse. You'll have to patch it and pray no one notices. When all is hung and steaming gently in the afternoon wind, you sit for a moment on an upturned bucket, just to breathe. You tear a bit of crust from the pocket of your apron, hard bread, mostly stale, but food all the same. You chew slowly and watch the linen dance in the wind. Then you're back at it, collecting the dry, folding the crisp, cold shirts, checking for mist stains or lingering damp. You sort the noble garments into a separate basket, laying a cloth between each folded item like layers of armor. You'll deliver these by hand, quietly, without making eye contact, without drawing attention. You are invisible. You must stay that way. At the kitchen door, you exchange a nod with a scullery maid who smells like fish, onions, and exhaustion. Inside, the cook shouts something about missing cloths. You wordlessly pass her a bundle of kitchen rags. She grunts her thanks. You leave before she remembers your name. The last stop is the Lord's Solar. You knock. A servant answers. You hand him the basket with a practiced bow. He doesn't thank you. He closes the door. Your hands are raw. Your neck aches. Your back feels twisted, but nothing is stained, nothing is missing. That means today was good. You return to the laundry yard to put out the fire, empty the tubs, and rinse the soapstones. A sheet has blown loose and lies half in the mud. You grab it before anyone sees. It's only a little dirty. You'll wash it again tomorrow. You don't complain. There's no point. At last, just as the sun begins to set behind the battlements, you sit again, this time longer. You hold your hands out towards the fading warmth of the fire and feel the pain pulse back into them. Your nails are chipped, your fingertips peeling, but they still work. In your apron pocket, you carry a scrap of linen, a torn piece from a ruined towel. You've been sewing it into a handkerchief in quiet moments. There's no time for that tonight, but just knowing it's there gives you something that belongs only to you. You eat in the servants' hall, pottage, bread, warm ale. You eat quickly, quietly, eyes low. Then you return to your pallet near the chimney. Your shift is over. Tomorrow will be the same. Water, soap, fire, and pain. But tonight, you sleep. The Castle Guard. You wake with a jolt, the butt of your spear still clutched in one hand. You must have nodded off again, but only for a moment, you're sure of it. The brazier beside you is nearly out, just a few orange coals crackling faintly in the darkness. You rub your eyes, shift your weight on the cold stone bench, and peer through the arrow slit beside you. Still night, still fog, still your watch. You're the castle guard, not a knight, not a soldier, not a man-at-arms with songs written about him, just a guard. You stand, you wait, you freeze, and if something goes wrong, you're the first to die. It's your second night shift this week, and your knees already ache. You roll your shoulder, feel the bruise from yesterday's training drill. A wooden blade slammed into your side hard enough to rattle your ribs. The sergeant called it a learning moment. You called it something else, silently. Your job is simple. Watch the gate, watch the wall, walk the perimeter when the bell strikes the hour, report anything strange, and don't fall asleep. You listen for the bell now, distant, muffled, probably 5 hours till dawn. The wind whistles through the arrow slits overhead, sharp and steady. You pull your cloak tighter. The wool is thin and doesn't help much, but it's all you're issued. Your breath fogs in the torchlight, curling into the stillness like smoke from a dying fire. You stretch your legs and walk a slow circle around the gatehouse interior.
The stone floor is slick with old condensation and soot from the torches. You know every crack, every uneven flagstone. You've paced it too many times to count. At the outer parapet, the wind hits harder. Your cloak flaps against your legs. The courtyard below is quiet. A lone dog sniffs around the kitchen door. Somewhere, a drunk stumbles out of the barracks latrine, mumbling a tune and failing to close the door behind him. You don't call down. Not your problem. Not tonight. You check the iron hinges on the main portcullis. Still locked, still rusted, still your responsibility if it jams when it's needed most. You run your gloved hand down the edge. It's freezing to the touch. You think about the day shift, better in some ways, sunlight, warmth, people to talk to. But during the day, there's shouting, drills, inspections. At night, you're alone, forgotten, except if someone breaks in. Then, suddenly, everyone remembers the night guard. Back inside, you take your seat again. You tilt your head and rest it briefly against the cold stone wall. Your helmet's off, too heavy for hour 7 of nothing. You rest your hand on your spear like it's a staff or a crutch, maybe both. You hear something, a sound just beyond the gate. Not a voice, not quite a footstep. You stand too fast, your knees complain. You move toward the door, grip your spear, hold your breath. It's nothing, a bird maybe, or the gate settling in the frost. You wait a few moments longer, then exhale slowly and return to your post. False alarm. You're jumpy tonight. Can't afford not to be. You sit again slowly. Your joints creak like a drawbridge. You pull a strip of dried meat from your pouch, cold, hard, a bit of gristle stuck to the edge. You chew slowly, jaw aching. This is dinner. Once a noble boy sneered at your meal as he passed, a pastry in one hand and a silk handkerchief in the other. You didn't say anything. You just kept chewing. That's what guards do. Keep chewing, keep watching, keep standing until they don't. You remember your first winter watch. Toes numb for days, fingers purple, skin cracked and bleeding. You learned the trick of wrapping wool inside your boots, layering grease cloth under your gloves. It helped a little. Midnight bells toll. You stand and make your round, from the eastern tower to the west, past the armory, past the chapel. You pause there,
Light flickers in the chapel window. The priest must be praying again. He never sleeps either. You climb to the wall walk and scan the woods beyond the outer bailey. Black trees sway in a sea of mist. The moon casts a pale stripe across the fields. You see no movement. You see everything. You think of your mother's farm, of harvest moons and cider, and wonder if she's still there. You hope she is. You make it back to your post just as the brazier dies completely. You don't bother relighting it. The cold keeps you awake better anyway. Sometime after the last bell, the captain arrives. His boots echo on the stone as he enters. He doesn't speak at first, just looks you over, checks the ledger, taps the pike rack once with the butt of his halberd. "Still breathing?" he asks. "Barely," I answer. He grunts, then passes by without further word. He never says good work. You're not here for praise. You're here because someone has to be. He leaves. You stretch once more, rotating your shoulder. The fog is lifting. The sky to the east is beginning to pale. Soon the bells will ring for morning prayer, and your shift will end. The day guards will arrive, loud, well-rested, freshly shaven. You'll nod, hand off your spear, and disappear back into silence. You descend the tower steps and make your way to the barracks. Your cot is rough, the blanket smells of mildew and smoke, but it's yours. You peel off your cloak, set your boots beside the bed, and sit a long moment before lying down. As your eyes begin to close, you hear the castle come alive, shouting in the yard, buckets clanking, the cook's voice barking orders. You've earned your sleep, but you know you'll be back tonight. The castle doesn't guard itself. There was a time last year, you still remember it, when bandits tried to storm the gate. Not many, just 6 or 7 desperate men, starving, drunk on stolen wine. They came after midnight, thinking the wall guards were asleep. You weren't. You sounded the bell. You shouted. You held the gate while others armed themselves. One of them, a tall one with an axe, almost made it to the portcullis. You caught him with a spear thrust through the ribs. He collapsed at your feet, died gurgling in the dirt. You didn't sleep for 3 nights after that, but no one thanked you. The steward sent down an extra crust of bread. The sergeant nodded once, said, "You did your job." That was it. You did sleep eventually, and when the bruises faded and the frostbite healed, you were posted right back on the gate because now they trusted you to stay awake. That was your reward. You shift your weight again, bones grinding. Your hip has a knot in it from years of leaning on stone. You ignore it. You've gotten used to ignoring things. Hunger, cold, the sneers of nobles, the fear of being the first to die if anything truly bad happens. And yet, despite everything, there's pride. Not the kind people toast in halls, but the kind that keeps your back straight when no one is watching. You keep the castle safe. That matters, even if no one sees it. You adjust your gear one last time before bed. The leather straps of your jerkin are cracked, the iron studs dulled from years of wear. Your helmet, dented at the rim, hangs beside your bunk. You should replace it. You won't. It still works. Around you, the other guards breathe deep in sleep. Some snore. One twitches as if fighting in his dreams. You envy them. They've done their part. Now they rest. You lie on your side and stare at the wall. The mortar lines look like roads on a map, winding and uncertain. You trace them with your eyes until they blur. Somewhere above in the solar, nobles stretch in feather beds. Below them, you sleep with a knife under your pillow and your cloak wrapped around your feet. And still, if something were to go wrong in the dead of night, it would be you they send first, because that's what castle guards are for. You close your eyes, and for a few precious hours, you don't have to watch anything. The Night Watchwoman. You rise in silence. It's not that anyone is asleep near you. It's that they're all long gone. The scullery maid is curled up by the hearth. The stable boy vanished into straw. The cook's snores echo through the kitchens. But your work begins now, in the hollow hours no one else wants. You are the night watchwoman. You're not a guard exactly. You don't wear armor, you don't carry a sword. But you walk the halls with a lantern in one hand and a key ring in the other. And if something catches fire, if someone cries out, or if something moves that shouldn't, it's your problem. You wear soft shoes, patched and tied with scraps of cloth. You move without echo. That's the rule. Your dress is wool, thick and plain, with extra layers underneath because the corridors at night are cold enough to crack teeth. Your lantern clicks once as you light it. The tallow candle flickers, casting long shadows across stone. You check the nursery first. 2 noble children sleeping fitfully beneath embroidered quilts. You don't know their names. You know when they have fevers, though, and which one wets the bed. You straighten the blanket and leave without a sound.
Next, the Hall of Tapestries. Grand scenes of battles, blood, and glory. You pass them slowly, your flame dancing in the glassy eyes of long-dead knights. Something creaks behind you. You don't turn around, just keep walking. You're not paid to be scared. You pass the library next. It's locked, but you check the door anyway. The last time it was left open, rats chewed through a manuscript, and the steward barked about it for a week. You jiggle the handle. Firm. You move on. The chapel is quiet. A votive candle still burns at the altar. You pause to snuff it, not out of irreverence, but caution. Last winter, a stray ember nearly caught the drapes. You touch the iron candlestick to make sure it's cold, then continue. You climb a narrow stairway, lantern held high. Your legs ache. This is your 3rd round tonight, and the castle isn't small. You walk with purpose, not hurried, not slow. Your ears stay sharp. You hear the creak of wood, the scuttle of mice, the faint drip of condensation off stone. You know every sound the castle makes, what's normal, what isn't. In the east wing, you find a window open. That's not right. It's latched from the inside during supper hours, and no one has reason to open it now. You set your lantern on the floor and close the window quietly. You don't report it. The steward doesn't believe in ghosts. You do. You check the laundry room next. Rows of steaming linens hung from rafters earlier are now stiff with cold. You tug one cloth down, a noble's cloak. Someone left it too close to the wall torch. The hem is singed. You sigh. You'll fix it yourself before anyone notices. You take the cloak with you, folded under your arm. You'll mend it in the still hour before dawn when the fire is low and your fingers shake from exhaustion. The kitchen corridor is next. A pot left on the hearth still steams faintly. You lift the lid. Onion broth, thin and sour. You dip a crust of bread into it. Careful not to take too much, just enough to feel like a person again. You don't eat with the others. You're not on their schedule. No one saves you a plate. But you've learned which shelves hide a wedge of cheese or a shriveled apple. The cook pretends not to know. Maybe she pities you. Maybe she once walked these same halls. You check the stair to the Lord's solar. You do not go up. You're not permitted. That's where the other world lives. The world with feather beds and warmed slippers and voices that ring with command. You just watch it from below. You head toward the servants' dormitory. A baby cries behind one door. You knock gently. A mother opens, blurry-eyed. You pass her a flask of warm water. She nods, thanks you without speaking. You leave her to it. Sometimes when the castle sleeps, the walls feel alive. Not haunted exactly, but heavy with all the lives passing through them. The floor beneath your feet was scrubbed by 1,000 women before you.
The stone arch above you was carved by someone who's been dust for centuries. You don't feel small, you feel connected. That's what keeps you moving. You take your final round just before dawn. The lantern is low now. You tilt it to coax out more light from the stub of candle, but there's not much left. The flame flutters, casting dancing shadows along the hallway walls. You pass through the lower storerooms, eyes peeled for anything out of place. This is where the rats come, where a spark could start a fire that would eat the whole castle. You pause by the armory door. It's cracked. That's wrong. You step inside, heart quickening. You don't have a weapon, just your keys, just your voice. You scan the racks, swords, pikes, axes, all accounted for. You check the back wall. Nothing. No one. A draft must have nudged the door, or someone left it unlatched. Still, you shut it firmly and slide the bolt home. Back at your seat near the kitchen hearth, you finally let yourself rest. You set the lantern beside you, unwrap the cloak you carried, and pull out needle and thread. The mending takes time. Your stitches are slow but even. You've done this before. You finish just as the bells toll for morning prayer. The castle stirs, a door creaks, someone groans, another day begins. You fold the cloak, return it to its peg, and climb to your cot above the linen stores, barely more than a shelf. You tuck your legs beneath your skirt, curl into yourself like a letter unopened, and close your eyes. The castle breathes around you. You sleep. There are moments in the middle of the night when you forget the hour entirely. The castle exists out of time, its own little world of shadow and draft and silence. The walls breathe, the rafters creak. You've learned to tell which sound means loose timber and which means wind. You carry a small pouch of salt in your apron, not for seasoning, for protection. The old cook told you once that evil things dislike salt, that if you ever saw something that didn't belong in the halls, you should throw it at its feet. You've never had to, but the pouch stays. In the east corridor, near the old chapel, there's a patch of stone colder than the rest. No matter the season, you step over it every time. Just a habit, no one talks about it. Sometimes a nobleman's mistress will be out late, slipping from one chamber to another. You pretend not to see. You keep your eyes down, your keys quiet. Secrets are not yours to keep, but they are yours to carry. You once caught the steward himself stealing candles, taking them from chapel stores to light his own hearth in winter. He locked eyes with you, said nothing. Neither did you. But a week later, you found a thick blanket folded on your cot. No explanation. You never mentioned it. These are the quiet trades of castle life, the unspoken debts and wordless bargains made not in coin, but in silence and stitches, and you are fluent in them. In the quietest part of the night, just before the birds begin to stir, you sometimes pause beneath the great window overlooking the courtyard. You let the lantern hang low, just for a moment, and you look up. The stars shimmer, hard and cold and far beyond reach. But they're always there. No matter what happened that day, no matter what burns or breaks, the stars return. You think of your mother's stories. She used to say the night had ears, that it listened to the women who worked while others slept. And maybe it does. You've whispered your share of wishes into its stillness, most of them practical, none of them answered. Still, the watching comforts you. You take a slow breath, stretch your aching arms, and begin walking again. The same halls, the same locks, the same long shadows. Because someone has to. Because someone always has. And tonight, as always, that someone is you.